Historic Preservation Commission, January the 8th, 2024. It's just a couple minutes after 6. In compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of that act, they should state so at this time. Pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Copeland.
Here.
Mr. Carroll. Mr. Testa.
Here.
Ms. Bisagno.
Here.
Ms. Wilson-Striddick.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Here.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the reorganization portion of the agenda tonight, we'd like to recognize Corbin Cogswell for his years of service, and the mayor is going to say a few words about Corbin, for Corbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is an honor to honor someone that's been so important to the city of Cape May. As you all know, the HPC has just been so important in protecting what so many of us love about the city of Cape May. And one of our long-standing members who not just was there for a long time, but also was just a really highly contributing member of the group, as you all know well. And that is Corbin Cogswell. So Corbin, it's an honor to read this proclamation recognizing Corbin Cogswell for his service on the Cape May City Historic Preservation Commission. Whereas Corbin Cogswell, formerly of Baltimore, where he served on a historic commission, is a retired fraud investigator and a 26-year resident of the city of Cape May, who owned and operated a bed and breakfast on Columbia Avenue with his wife from 1997 to 2004. And whereas he was a member and a representative of the Historic Accommodations of Cape May, occasionally appearing at city council meetings, and whereas Mr. Cogswell is currently an employee of MAC, working in the gift shop of the Venerable Lighthouse, and remains an active volunteer with the Episcopal Church of the Advent here in Cape May. And whereas Mr. Cogswell has dedicated 25 years to serving as a representative of a Class A commissioner on the City of Cape May Historic Preservation Commission, and whereas during his time serving the Historic Preservation Commission, Mr. Cogswell has served as a voice of institutional knowledge, worked to codify and establish the first standards book in 2002, and assisted applicants to the Historic Preservation Commission with his expertise as a restoration carpenter and a handyman who had a business in Cape May doing such. Now, therefore, I, Zachary Mollick, Mayor of the City of Cape May, do hereby recognize Corbin Cogswell for his many years of public service and thank him for serving our community and extend him the best wishes in his future endeavors. Thank you, Corbin. Do a picture. Hold it. Thanks, Corbin.
Through 25 years, I've always been proud to be a part of this group and have always liked the support I've received from every commissioner on the committee. I was telling Chris when I came in that Bob Feinberg's first meeting and last meeting were my first and last meeting. I've served under 4 chairs. Started out with Judy DiOrio. She was just about leaving when I came on. Then there was Skip Laughlin, Mary Ann Gaffney, and now somebody over here, oh, Warren And I've received this support throughout, and it's been a pleasure and a privilege to serve the city in this manner. Now, there are five ladies I want to recognize because they never get any thanks, but they're the ones who keep us going. I don't know the first lady's last name, but her name was Lisa. She was, when I came on, she was the secretary for the construction office and all the boards. And then Edie Koppas came in and took the boards. After Edie was Aaron Burke, who you may know now is the city clerk. And then Karen Keenan took over. And then finally, we got our own secretary, Judy Decker. Without these five ladies, this business would not run. So, thank you all. You all have a good year. And I'm going to go home and have dinner.
Thank you, Corbin. Reorganization. We have two new members tonight. Steve Johnson is on my right at the end, alternate number 1. Kevin Hammerman is on the left, alternate number 2. And then we have some people that their term is moving on, so we want to do an oath of office for those people. So, do we know? We normally go up here.
Want me to take care of those, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman? Or?
Yes. Yeah, you want to take the oath? Steve and Kevin, you want to take the oath of office?
Kevin, that's yours. Steve.
Oh, okay. If you're going to do Stevenson, you need to do Becker, don't you?
And John. John's going from alternate.
Yeah, and John.
Right.
And that is a cast of characters.
Yeah. No, you don't need
Yeah,
anything.
but
I gotta get
Folks look like you're ready for a choir singing.
yeah, gentlemen, if you just want to raise your right hands, and you can read from the paper. Go ahead.
I, Stephen Johnson, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office of the Historic Preservation Commission member according to the best of my ability, and that I will not use my office to grant preferential treatment nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage not available to the general public. So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much.
Yeah?
Thank you.
I, Kevin Hamren, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state under the authority of the people, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of office of Historic Preservation Commission member according to the best of my ability, and that I will not use my office to grant preferential treatment nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage not available to the general public, so help me God.
Congratulations, Kevin.
Okay. I, Joseph Stevenson, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, that I will bear the faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state, under the authority of the people, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all of the duties of the office of Historic Preservation Commission member according to the best of my ability, and that I will not use my office to grant preferential treatment nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage not available to the general public. So help me God.
So I, John Becker, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state, under the authority of the people, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office of Historic Preservation Commission member according to the best of my ability, and that I will not use my office to grant preferential treatment nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage not available to the general public, so help me God.
We'll get you one. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I think that's all the members to be sworn in tonight.
Thank you.
Congratulate our new members and our members who are continuing to serve. Thank you very much for your service to the city of Cape May. Thank you again. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good night.
Okay, next order of business is the appointment of a chairperson. Do I have a nomination?
I would like to nominate Warren Copeland, who's currently serving as chair, to continue in that office with full support.
I'll second that nomination.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate it and look forward to working with you again. Appointment of vice chair. I would like to nominate Tom Carroll, existing vice chair, to continue in that role.
Well, I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Copeland, seconded by Mr. Testa. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
I abstain.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appointment of solicitor to the commission. I would like to nominate Chris Gillen-Schwartz as solicitor for the Historic Preservation Commission.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Copeland, seconded by Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Copeland.
I'd like to speak to the resolution,
Yes,
please,
of
so
course.
that we could say some things before we actually vote on it. I'm going to be voting in favor of this resolution, but I thought that I ought to make some of the thoughts I had about a new solicitor clear, so that people would understand how I feel. It's very clear that we need a new solicitor. You've all attended these meetings. You realize how complex our work is, and we need to have someone at the ready to guide us in terms of the legal issues that come up. So the need is obviously there for a new solicitor. I think that in demonstration of his prior offices and his training, that it is clear at this point from the experience with the city that Chris Gillen-Schwartz is qualified to do the work, that he's had experience with respect to the city and to its issues. He's familiar with us. He's familiar with the town. Another reason I'm going to vote in favor of this resolution is because I believe that in almost all instances that are important, there is an alignment here between the position of this commission and the city as a whole, and that's because this is a situation where we deal with applicants, where our positions are taken, and if we have issues and controversy, it's primarily with applicants, and obviously having a solicitor who represents us is important. We also have potential conflicts with other boards in this city, and Chris is in a position where he does not represent those boards, so he's able to carry out representation of the HPC as our advocate. The only reservations I do have are reservations that concern the fact that he's also the city solicitor. And it's great to be able to do all these jobs. And as I think you all know, we, under ordinance, are required to deliver advisory reports to the city with respect to its projects. And we have, and we're about to do some tonight, we've done a fair amount of research, and we look into, make recommendations, and do things that are not in the nature of being a judicial type body, but an advocacy body vis-a-vis the governing body here in the city council. And so we will have from time to time positions that we want to advocate and move forward on. And I hope that under those circumstances, and I should say I've read Chris's engagement contract, I've read the resolution with the city. I find that they're all otherwise in order and what I expected them to be. But should there arise situations where we have the city council or governing body on one side and the HPC on the other side, it's my hope that we'll find a way to resolve those conflicts and potential conflicts in a manner consistent with professional responsibility and ethical practice. And that's my say.
Thank you. And I had a candid conversation with Chris on the subject, and I would ask him to make a comment.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Testa, and I, 100% respect your opinion and your experience in this field for obvious reasons. One positive, and then I'll address the conflict issue. The conflict issue can be addressed in nearly all municipal instances by way of conflict counsel. That's how every municipality handles these types of things, and that's on a case-by-case basis. But more importantly, the reason I'm able to take this appointment is a statutory one, and the municipal land use law contemplates that in the absence of a separate appointment, the default is the municipal solicitor will be counsel to the Historic Preservation Commission. And I actually fulfilled that role in another jurisdiction. When I was in West Cape May, I served as their HPC counsel because they didn't appoint somebody else. So I did that in another instance. Now, Cape May deals with substantially more complicated HPC issues and have a more active board, but the same principle kind of applies to that. And I will say that the reason I think the statute is aligned that way is because it's really an advisory role when the HPC is commenting on city projects. And, municipal government and these types of boards, the HPC and even city council, there is enough room for a range of opinions on public projects at this board and at the council table. And Councilwoman Baldwin can tell you there can be obviously difference of opinions, but that's allowed. And the HPC can have a spirited discussion about a particular city project, and that's not going to create a conflict because it's an advisory opinion. And that advisory opinion can be positive or negative, and that's fine. To the extent that when I had this discussion with the chairman, I had trouble envisioning a scenario where that could really arise, but to the extent it does, we'll evaluate it on a case-by-case basis. And if any member has a concern about that, there's an easy way to address it, and it's by way of conflict counsel.
Mm-hmm. That's why I saved that point for last.
And I will say this, over the last year, I've had the opportunity to, I don't know actually many attorneys that can say this, but I've actually been on the opposite side of this table from the HPC when I was a private attorney before I was involved in city work. So sitting on this side of the table is really interesting. I don't know a lot of attorneys that can say that in South Jersey. But that gives me some perspective, and particularly the last year I had a lot of contact with Chairman Copeland and Bob Feinberg, who I've had numerous cases with over the years in the city and out of the city. And his experience and his perspective and his years of experience, I can't recreate that. But he was sharing a lot of his experience and the many years that he served this board. And both he and I were successful in defending the city's ordinances pertaining to the HPC. and the HPC's decision-making in court this year. So I think that I'm happy to serve this board, and if I can bring a little bit of what Bob Feinberg was able to do over the last few years, hopefully we'll be able to do some good work here.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just chime in for a second? I also think when you take the dual role of what you're doing, between the HPC and council representing both of us, it brings an alignment there as well, and I think that is a good thing, and I understand what Mr. Testa's talking about and how you clarified that conflict counsel can easily, come on board if we have anything like that. Since I've been here, there hasn't been, but I think it could be, I think this is a great thing for the city, so we do stay aligned. So, thank you.
Other comments? I would make the comment, I think while there may be some chance for conflict here or there, I believe the relationship between City Council and the Historic Preservation Commission is already really quite good and strong, and this will only make it even better. And so I would make a motion that we accept Chris Gillen Schwartz as the HBC attorney. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Copeland, seconded by Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to working.
Will that appointment also constitute the approval of the resolution? Because there are two items on the agenda. So it would be nice if it just covered for both. Appointment, and then there's a resolution. Under resolutions, it's authorizing, and then there's appointment up above. So did we just approve the resolution? I'm willing to vote again. I just thought we would just do it in one vote.
I thought that's what the board was doing, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next item is the newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I meant down below, Tom, under resolutions. So you got a resolution at the bottom, and you got an appointment up
okay,
above.
okay.
So if we could just do it together as one, terrific.
Okay. Well, we usually vote the resolutions all in one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The resolutions, we'll get to the resolutions. Let's continue on with our reorganization. The designation of official newspaper to the commission, I would make a motion that we make the Star and Wave the official newspaper for the HPC. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Copeland, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item is the approval of the meeting dates to be posted and advertised for year 2024 and January 2025. Do I have a motion?
I will motion that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Did you want to amend it now, or you want to amend it later?
No, we're going to leave it as it is.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Ms. Pisagno. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item is the, a little confusing here, is the rotation of the review committee. The review committee has been made up of the chair and Mr. John Becker and Corbin Cogswell. And what I would suggest we do now, because we have two new members of the HBC, and it's a great place to participate and to gain understanding and acceptance of our standards, I would suggest that if Mr. Becker is willing, and I'm committed to doing the reviews, that we rotate the two new members, Steve and Kevin, alternately. And so we'll put a schedule together so you would know what that is. But it seems like that would be a best way to do it. So do I have an agreement on this new form of review committee? Any discussion?
I agree, it's a good process, and I do have a question about it. That is, we have 3 members, but including 1 alternate, great place to learn, but is it the right, the review committee passes on applications, and those applications are approved in review, and we ratify them, so I guess it's okay. I'm just concerned that we have an alternate member who isn't entitled to vote in the full body, working on something that's a determinative review. So,
Yeah, I can answer that. First, by ordinance, the chair has the authority to say grace over their acceptance of an application or whether it goes to the full board. We have voluntarily, as a Historic Preservation Commission, we have voluntarily expanded that to have a committee. So it's more than just one person making or participating in the decision. So we've already expanded the issue. The alternates, for the audience, members here know, the alternates don't vote. They do participate in the discussion, or they can participate in the discussion, but they don't vote. And I would see the same thing in the review.
I'm glad I accept the explanation. I've been wondering about John for a while, because he was exercising that function with you all before. So I just wanted an explanation of it. So great. I think it's a good idea to bring people into the process.
So I don't know whether do we need well, let's have a motion and do it formally. Do we?
I will make a motion that the review committee be the chair, including John as a regular member, and our 2 new alternates alternating the positions on a monthly basis.
Do I have a second?
Second to the motion.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Testa. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
You've all had an opportunity to review the minutes of December 18th, 2023. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So
Second?
yeah, me.
Motion by Ms. Wilson Stridick, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa? Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolutions, Sawyer, Dowry, 665 Hughes Street. This is Block 1058, lots 10 and 18. Resolution 2023-48. The Mayo Family LLC. This is 1236 Lafayette Street, Block 1129, Lot 16. Resolution 2023-49. America and McLaughlin, 1009 Kearney Avenue, Block 1097, Blocks 8 and 9, Resolution 2023-50. And authorizing appointment of Christopher Gillen Schwartz as solicitor of the HPC, Resolution 2024-01. Do I have a motion to accept those resolutions?
So move.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Applications approved or denied and reviewed. You have had a chance to review those. Do I have a motion to accept those?
So moved.
I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Becker, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Mr. Copeland? Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. First order of business, old business is Ramo 266 Grant Street, Block 1019, Lot 7. This is a non-contributing rebuild to a 2.5-story house, retaining the rear addition. This was before us last period, and we all had a number of comments to make, and they are back before us to present their solution. Hello, Catherine, we need would you turn your mic on, please? And,
I don't know, I don't have much to say.
well, we need your name in relationship to the property, please.
So I'm Catherine Lorenz, architect.
Anthony Caparizzo, family of homeowners.
Sorry, sir, could you spell your last name?
Caporizzo.
Thank you.
Okay, I made copies of the old ones, the old submission, and there were some comments made that I believe have been addressed. But this is the old house. I remember someone particularly saying it looked like a box. I remember also there was not enough articulation. The massing wasn't appropriate. I was attempting to design a somewhat contemporary craftsman-style house. And that was given a big NO. And some of the thoughts that came up were maybe this should be more of a shingle-style house. Maybe we should have less windows in the front of the house. Maybe we should put a porch on the front of the house. Maybe, which I did do, wander the streets around the neighborhood and looked at all the different types of homes. One in particular grabbed me. And so there are two drawings that I would like to bring to your attention that sort of puts the whole thing in a nutshell. The first one is the front elevation of the house. I think if you compare that to what was originally submitted, the box, this was originally submitted. I have tried to articulate the front of the house more by adding a front porch. I have deleted the triple windows in trying to follow the style of a craftsman. I've also reconfigured the roof so that the dormer is in the front and not on either end, so it doesn't have that big box-like appearance. And also the dormer is more in character of a craftsman-style house. It has that very wide slope. I've also changed the railing to the house so that it might be more in style with a craftsman. We also enter the house now from the front with stairs. So I think that the plans have slightly changed, but to accommodate the appearance of the house, I have taken your advice, gone back to the drawing board, and I myself think this is a much nicer design than what had originally been proposed. So I am grateful for all of the advice that I got the last time. So this is the first drawing to sort of explain how the front developed. And then I have here sort of an explanation about what's going on this block. And the bottom row shows all the pictures of the houses that are adjacent to our little house. All of these houses are non-contributing. All of these houses are below flood. In the future, these houses will either get the permission to be demolished or they will be raised. That's just the way it is. The property is too valuable here in Cape May for these houses to stay. But I wanted you to see the difference. The middle line shows you the existing homes, and the arrow shows you the existing house that we got permission last time to demolish. And then the top line is a pretend. Let's pretend that people decide to keep these homes. In my experience, no one's going to keep these homes. These homes are all going. But let's pretend that everyone decides they want to keep their home. They're going to have to raise their home a minimum of 5 to 8 feet because these houses are right all below flood. So what this diagram illustrates is the new house compared to the old houses that will all eventually be raised. And the new house is still not at the peak that it's allowed to be, but it certainly is, massing-wise, I think perfectly acceptable to any of the existing houses on the block. I do not see this as being too big as compared to any of the other houses. And that was a concern that was brought up to me. We are going for a zoning application. So this is for conceptual approval only. And that's sort of the all of it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Catherine. This, as most of you know, but for the audience and the new members, Catherine has appeared before us on numerous occasions and is one of the architects in the city that has a comprehensive understanding of what it is we're trying to accomplish, and we appreciate her work. This pushback was a little unusual, and I appreciate your response. I also appreciate your showing the streetscape. We have two issues here. We have the individual property that we're concerned with, and then we're also concerned with the streetscape. You've answered the streetscape, and I think you've taken all of our advice and have embraced in the new presentation. We normally go around the room. In this instance, I'm not sure that's necessary. So rather than do that, I would just open it up for comments by the members of the commission.
I have a couple. So, Catherine, thank you. You're very responsive to our comments. And just to mention for everybody else, she came and reviewed this with us in the review committee as well. And the result is, I think, really excellent and much more appropriate in terms of the smaller scale and the articulation on the front facade, particularly given the dormer gable instead of the whole width of the house front gable and the railings and the scale of the more modest windows. It's just a very strong proposal. Thank you.
I would also like to comment. You've kind of thrown us into the future here. I don't remember any other application where we've kind of looked around and said, well, this seems to be what's happening. And if we project that into the future, now we're doing what's right to meet the future conditions. But I certainly have to agree with you, knowing how low that area is and what's happening with other houses like that. They'll either get torn down or they will get elevated and probably drastically redone. So I have no problem with accepting that we are looking into the future on that. One element in your new design that I think doesn't really go along with the other designs is you're now 2 windows up in the front dormer. They just, with their cross glass design and their horizontal appearance compared to the vertical of other things, I think even if they became 3 windows together, not taking even up that much more space because they're already wider than the windows below them. If there was 3 windows up there, you'd get more light up there, more air, and I think that would work a little bit better.
With the crosshatch, Tom, or,
Well, not really with the cross hatch because you're really not using that
right,
anywhere else.
Except in the railings.
Yeah. Well, the railing is kind of a Chippendale design, but that never meant that you ended up using the Chippendale design into the window sashwork.
I have to agree with Tom that the only design element that sort of gave me a little hesitation was that window. It just didn't quite go, and you do want more light in that 3rd floor. I also wondered about the pitch of that roof. Could it be steeper, or would that make that room unusable? Because it's kind of a low pitch compared to...
It's going to be, it will not be considered habitable by Cape May City standards, but it's going to be a playroom for the
For
kids.
short people.
So for little people, it's perfect.
And your extension out the back is taller after you get to the center of the roof. There is a taller extension out.
Yes, there is a taller area.
At the back.
People can go in the back and little people go in.
I have really no problems with your window, but apparently my colleagues feel that you should be changing them from horizontal to vertical. I have to say, this is the first time I have ever seen a pro forma elevation done. One of the problems we had before was that in the elevation of this house, it appeared so much taller relative to the existing houses. So what you have done is you've pro forma elevated them all so that we can see the relative height of this one versus other houses should they be elevated. And that gave me more of a problem last time. I now feel a lot better about that, and thinking that it's probably true that something is going to get elevated there, old ones or new ones. So I feel much better about its height and its size relative to the streetscape. So I think it's a very responsive way to handle our comments.
other comments from the
And that I think that the rendering is great, especially as Jim said, that you allowed us to imagine the conceptual thing of what is going to eventually happen. But even as it is right now, I think it will complement the rest of the neighborhood beautifully. I really do.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say you really pulled it off. You really transported this place from Seattle City to Cape May. Great job.
Well, you all beat me up pretty bad.
We did, didn't we?
Catherine, we thank you for remembering every single thing that we said.
terrific, so, thank you. And we didn't beat you up too badly. This is a warm and fuzzy group, as you know. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to grant conceptual approval.
Second.
To the application as submitted tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a
Yes.
question on the motion. I heard some commentary about the window.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to incorporate with that the motion, or
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that if Tom feels really strong about his recommendations about the window. I didn't, but if the rest of you all, I'll make a motion, we give it conceptual approval, but that that include the changing of the windows to the multiple vertical windows, 3, 2, 3, without diamond patterns.
And we should add to that motion that that can be approved in review.
Well, remember, it's got to come back for final. It's got to come back for final, right?
Oh, for a resolution.
Yeah, you'll need a resolution for final
Yeah.
approval, I think. You're going in front of the zoning board?
Yes, it's got to go in front of the zoning board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus she would owe us construction plans and everything.
So
Well, I'm not-
the conceptual approval could include, the commentary tonight and the commentary about the windows, and then the final submittal can include those changes, and that will be subject to the board's review at that
The
time.
final submission will show 3 windows and get rid of the X-bracing at those windows.
So I
Well,
have a
I'm
motion.
willing to make all that my motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Pisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next order of business is ADIS Inc., doing business as Lemire Beachfront Resort, 1317 Beach Avenue. This is Block 1146, Lots 6 through 24. This is a non-contributing building. This is demolition.
Good evening, Chairman and Commission members. For the record, my name is Keith Davis. I'm an attorney at Nemad Davis & Goldstein. I'm here on behalf of Addis, Inc. Join me to my right is George Andy, the authorized representative of that entity. Francesca Santoro is here. She's the general manager for Lemire Beachfront Resort, and our project architect, Bill McLeese, is here as well. So we'll handle the demolition aspect of the application first, and then
Yes,
move
sir.
into the new construction.
Yeah, they're two separate
Understood.
issues.
So the demolition entails removal of the existing south wing and the separate detached beach house, which was acquired by Addis after it was constructed by prior owners. It was never part of the original Lemire operation initially. Both of those structures are non-contributing structures. I believe the south wing was constructed, I'm told, by Mr. Andy in approximately 1998, and the beach house was constructed, I believe, in approximately 2002.
Could I just interrupt you for
Certainly.
a second to make this a little bit more efficient? The beach house particularly, there's 9 points that we look for to get approval for demolition. Do you have those 9 points? Do you know what they are? Do you have?
You're going to have to speak to those 9 points.
I did send them. I sent them.
Here, I have them. If,
That'd be great.
well, so what we want to do is we want to go down the list. We don't have to expand dramatically on all of them, but each of the 9 points, and we'll restrict this to the beach cottage, right?
And then come back to the south wing?
Now, I think this,
There's, the south wing is going to be demolished as well.
yes, I understand.
And for those of us who get too confused, Beach Avenue generally runs east-west. So when you say south, I'm assuming you're talking about the western side of the property. Right? You got
Southwest.
Yeah, it's east-west on Beach Avenue, with Pittsburgh being on the east, Trenton being on the west, New Jersey being on the north. And to me, it's the west side and the
Internally, we
northwest side.
refer to it the south wing, but we can certainly
Yeah,
call it the
but
west.
To look at the directions on the map.
So the easiest way to do this is if you would read each of the points and then make a brief comment.
Certainly. Well, I'm going to have our architect,
Yeah,
Mr. McLeese,
that's
do
fine.
that, because he's looked at these items.
So, as Mr. Davis has already pointed out, the building itself, the survey that we received
for the property indicates that it was built in the 1950s, I believe, 1950s era.
Excuse me, I don't mean to keep interrupting, but to save some time,
Okay,
we need the 9 points.
that's fine.
Read the point and then
So,
respond.
based on the fact that the building was constructed in the early 2000s, we don't really see that there is a historical significance with regard to this property specifically as it relates to the historic district and its contribution thereof. It's a non-contributing structure as it is today. With regard to item number 2, the purpose for the demolition is to allow for the Lemare property to expand. That expansion includes both hotel units, which would be replacing existing hotel units, as well as an event or a banquet space. We don't see, in terms of the program that's needed to be, that's required and that's needed to be accommodated, cannot fit within the volume or the mass of the existing building that's there today with regard to the beach house. With regard, do you want me to cover both at the same time? Beach
No.
house and South Wing,
No,
separate?
just
Okay.
to the beach house.
Okay. The beach house itself, with regard to its importance to the municipality, the beach house is a duplex property, which is sitting in a single-family, more or less, neighborhood on one side of the street and a hotel property on the opposite side of the street in a hotel zone. So what we're looking to do is, with this demolition, allow that hotel property to be consolidated with regard to the lands and operate as one coherent property as opposed to operating a duplex property in conjunction with a hotel property.
And removal of it, would it impact the historic district in any way?
I don't see that the significance of this property would negatively impact the historic district as a result of its removal.
Is there any unique aspect of, this is point number 4, of the property that would want to be reproduced in a manner that's consistent with the historic district?
I don't think that, with regard to the property and its architecture, obviously, an attempt was made to kind of have a relationship to the historic district and the properties that reside in it and do contribute to the district. I don't think that there is anything with regard to this specific property that would enrich or contribute to those adjacent properties which are contributing to the district. So I don't see that as a negative impact by its removal.
5 determines the impact of the removal to property values, promoting business, creating new positions, attracting tourists, students, writers, historians, artists, artisans, new residents, encourage study and interest in American history, stimulate interest in study in architecture and design, educate citizens in American culture and heritage, or make the municipality a more attractive or desirable place to live. Do you believe any of those aspects would be diminished by the removal of the existing duplex structure?
I do not. I think actually the removal allows for the Lemare property to renovate and expand, which would actually create jobs and encourage business for the hotel district.
Because, as hopefully we will eventually get to, it will be replaced with
Correct.
a new, modern expansion to the Lemare Hotel.
Exactly, exactly.
6, I think you've already addressed, no impact to the removal, of the removal to the historic district, correct?
Correct.
7, anything with respect to the structural soundness? I mean, it's relatively new construction.
Correct. It's relatively recent construction, so it's not a situation where the building is dilapidated or structurally deficient in any way. It's really a matter of trying to accommodate 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag with regard to the proposed program.
8, and I think, is it fair to say all these points, all these criteria relate to structures that are historic in nature, which is clearly not the case with respect to this
That's
duplex?
not, right, correct. That's not the case with this property, which is a non-contributing duplex.
So are there any compelling reasons for not retaining the structure or improvement at its present site? The proximity of the proposed new location, its accessibility to residents of the municipality, the probability of significant damage to the structure or improvement as a result of the relocation? No relocation. This is pure demolition that's being contemplated here.
That's correct.
So 8 and 9 don't really apply.
Right. Same as to 9,
Excuse for
right?
8 or 9.
Same as to 9, Bill?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. For all those reasons, do you believe the demolition of the structure is warranted?
I do.
Thank you, and we'll come back, circle back on the other demo as well. This property was built in they're not really certain, but around 1950 or something, which is close to our period of significance. And
We take issue with that, Chairman.
No, it's more like only 20-plus years old. The summer house.
Correct.
the summer house.
Yeah, we refer to it as the
There
beach house.
there seems to be some difficulty of knowing exactly when it was constructed, but it also has had a lot of significant change and
According to the
alteration to
survey,
it. I mean,
changed.
which is the reason why it's non-contributing. It's just been completely,
Gutted and changed.
Well, changed to the point where it doesn't contribute anything.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move to grant a demolition permit with respect to the structure.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Could we have discussion on the motion?
Yes?
I'm listening to your viewpoint about how it would certainly not interfere on the historic district. But also have seen, not only in Cape May, but in many other towns, the more densely you let development go right along the beachfront, the impact is on the residential areas behind it. And right behind this are significant historic houses that are going to be affected. Is this one that you want to tear down is not listed as a historic building. But when you look at its design, its porches, its cupola, it was really meant to blend in with Cape May. So you might be bringing more jobs, more business and things like that. But this is really going to impact on that neighborhood. La Mer is one of the absolute biggest hotel businesses
Properties.
in town, and it's grown and grown and grown. And to have it keep spreading towards the residential area. I look at that building as kind of a segue between the residential use and what they have on the beachfront. We fought this out too when the old restaurant was on the front of the property.
Right.
And all of a sudden the La Mer needed more room, so that has suddenly had 3 more stories go up. And we argued too that was a nice break between the beautiful shingle-style houses right down the street from us, that to have a 1-story restaurant as you go around the corner.
Yep.
So to me, this whole thing is just getting so oversized. And I don't know if there's any neighbors that really know this is going on. Lots of times in January, we don't get many people from the public coming to hear us, but I really think a lot of people behind there would be very disappointed with us to see that we just let that go without any consideration for what that house can do to help the back end of La Mer break into a historic neighborhood.
Maybe we respond? We're just here on the demolition. We're not here on the construction that we hope to get to that would replace the beach house. I do want to make sure the commission members understand that the beach house is part and parcel of the La Mer Hotel operation. So even though it was, I believe, originally historically approved as a duplex, it is not, it's used for transient purposes. It is rented out as part of the La Mer Hotel operation as a transient use on a weekly basis. Rentals are provided in that. So understand the comments raised about the transition, but this beach house is very much part and parcel of the existing La Mer operation right now. I don't want the commission to believe that it's being leased out on an annual basis. It is used as a weekly rental right now.
I have looked at the plans for what you want to put there too.
Yeah, well,
That's in my thinking as well,
Yeah.
when I'm saying.
Well, we were going to present everything at once, but we've been asked to just present the demolition, which is what we're doing. We're exceeding
I'm
the
willing
chairman's
to,
request.
I'm willing to think compartmentally about the demolition. And while I understand Tom's point about how that house seems to make a transition between the south side of New Jersey and the north side of New Jersey. The north side of New Jersey is very important, and that's certainly the thing that Tom is bringing up. New Jersey is a wide street, but what we have here is a buffer situation between the C3 block, on which La Mer is located, and the R block immediately to the north. And while I don't see the value of retaining, and I've made the motion for demolition, I will have serious issues with respect to the to the next step, which is what's being brought in to replace it. But I can sever those things in my mind and make the motion for demolition. Was that motion seconded? Yes, it was. So we're debating it now.
Well, we've opened it. Tom asked us to open it.
It's in the comment phase.
Okay.
Mr. Testa moved it, and Mr. Stevenson
Yeah,
seconded.
I forget who moves
But
it
it's
second.
been open.
I would like to speak to the issue of the non-contributing status. When I look at this building, it looks like a building that would have been contributing. And if you read the description, the surveyor says, visual evidence might suggest that it dates to the mid-19th century, but the absence of period fabric on the exterior make this impossible to verify by this means. So what we're dealing with is a house that looks like it fits into the historic fabric of Cape May, and you're asking to have it demolished. I just wanted to put that on record.
Other comments? Other comments on the demolition of the beach house?
Janice's point, I mean, don't you think we should have this verified?
It's been surveyed, and I said 1950, but, you know, for me, that's mid-century, and it does look like it was purposely built to fit into the community. But it is rated non-contributing, and the reason it was rated non-contributing is because of the changes that have been made over time.
Right.
So I think it's unfortunate that buildings like this want to be torn down, because it does give us a smooth transition between the two communities, a more modern hotel and the streetscape in the back. And that's the issue that you're going to have to deal with when you vote. So with that, is there any further discussion on this application? If not, we have a motion, and we have it seconded.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Copeland.
I'm going to vote no, which is a bit unusual, I think, but this building does provide a transition to the community that I think is important. It was clearly built with that in mind, and even though it's rated as non-contributing, I believe it provides a historic value to the community. So I vote no.
Mr. Carroll.
I'm also voting no.
Mr. Testa.
I'm voting yes.
Ms. Pisagno.
I'm voting no.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick.
No.
Mr. Stevenson.
No.
Mr. Becker.
No.
Okay. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is interesting, because I don't remember. This is your first time here. I don't remember a time when we're voting on something that's voted non-contributing. So, yeah, but I think it does provide the barrier.
One thing that we can't really break, but every application that the Andes have ever brought, there's been tons of missteps.
This says 44. What says visual analysis? Actually, I'm not convinced that
Mainly, and particularly once we started hearing what's in that.
Yeah, they just mentioned the 56. Right.
Are you sure that's what it is?
Oh, yeah.
I know, I thought that was like the cutoff is 1948. Warren was thinking.
No, it is. How's that feel being the lone wolf over there? Yeah. Actually, so it was important that that motion happened because well, so now now let's talk about the demolition of the other two pieces. I can totally support that.
Oh, yeah. And then there's, that's block and steel.
Correct. Which we should probably immediately make a motion to demolish the other two pieces, the south wing, or the west wing, and the north piece of wing. Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah. I'll vote for that one.
Jim's feeling bad.
No one will. Yeah. No, well, not in its current. So I would argue, as an architect, that there are ways you could do this, keep that house, and make it even more wonderful.
A good architect can do all kinds of things.
I mean, so I think that the event center could actually benefit, I think, from
Right.
that house. And
That
how,
house was moved there, and I'll bet you anything, if you went in and you did some forensics, you'd find.
Just like the usually you see, I think that was so started. Just carved it out and dropped it. It's required by
So you're having second thoughts, Stephen? Well, this is, our meeting usually doesn't start like this.
yeah, there was a long period of, sort of purely boilerplate stamping stuff tonight. Oh, yes. Thank you, sir. So Warren, we should probably make sure that we vote on the second demolition component.
Yes, if there was a
Immediate, yeah, if they want to.
Tom asked for police protection.
So, why don't, you want to go ahead and make that? No, yeah, we can make it, yeah.
We're back.
Thank you for that accommodation. Appreciate the commission's time. We're obviously very disappointed with the board's vote on what we deem to be a structure of absolutely no historic significance within the district. And we'd like to have some time to look into the survey that you have. I think there's some confusion about 1950 versus 2002, and be able to provide some additional testimony and records with respect to that issue. Since I'm assuming with the board's vote on that issue, the west wing, south wing, whatever we want to call it, might be met with a similar fate, perhaps not.
I wouldn't assume that at all.
I wouldn't
No, I
assume
don't
that at
think
all.
You can make that assumption.
I think the issue that we're struggling with is it seems as though anecdotal information that we have with regard to the age of the beach house is contrary to the survey record that you have. And obviously, at least some of your thinking and voting was colored by the survey.
If I may, Mr. McLeese. Sure. What I heard in the record is I think the board understands what's in the survey information. It's the design elements themselves and the improvements to that building and how it's situated and located in that area.
Right.
That is really kind of, I think, giving the board some pause.
And I can also be more specific. I did not find compelling enough reasons to support your claims for items 2, 3, and 6 of the 9 points of demolition.
Well, can you explain that further, just so
Sure.
we understand it? Because
Yeah.
the transition, I heard, I'd like to know how the transition relates to one of the criteria.
Sure. So there's nothing prohibiting, for item number 2, that building being continued to be used for its current purpose. That's item number 2. So I didn't hear any compelling reason why you couldn't use it for its existing purpose, or for the purpose of what you're intending to do. Number 3, the extent to which it has historical or architectural value, I don't think we know enough about its history to make that statement based upon what was presented tonight, particularly given the conflict with the property survey. Item number 6, I think a number of people had made a comment that the removal of it, its contextual contribution to New Jersey Avenue, given its scale and its transitional, let's say, role in the scale of the hotel to the residential scale adjacent, would in fact, upon its removal, impact the historic district. And I did not hear a compelling reason why it wouldn't. So that's why I have a challenge with feeling.
But I don't know
as if
how we can
items-
answer that question without getting into the development.
So, as an architect, I would say that if there is always a possibility that one could incorporate that house into what it is you're intending to do quite successfully. And if you would explore that, maybe the notion of demolishing the other two components, which we haven't made a motion for yet, you might find a reasonable approach. So I'll make that motion, actually. I'll move that we approve the demolition of well, given the directional challenges here, it would be the west wing and the north wing, as proposed in your documents.
Before we do that, you wanted to do more exploration, is what I heard. Is that what you said, or is that what you meant?
We did.
Meaning you want to take this information back? And
Well, but what I heard was you were assuming that we wouldn't approve the demolition of the south wing, the west wing and the north.
I said several things. I said what you said, Chairman, and then I also said what you said, Mr. Becker.
That's why I'm thinking it might be of value for us to vote on that second component of the demolition motion in order for you to, while you're considering options, to have that in your back pocket.
Well, if I could, it seems to me that you're asking for the beach property, so we don't want to confuse it, the beach duplex. You would want us to table that.
I don't think this commission can look at the demolitions that we're asking for in isolation. I think it can only be looked at in the context of the development that is ultimately being proposed. We acceded to your request, Chairman. Said, break this up, you got 2 demolition permits, and then you have an application for conceptual on the ultimate development. We'd like to be cooperative. We came in here, said, okay, we'll break this up. We'll go through and deal with the demolition. Then it was voted down. And the commission hasn't even heard about what we're intending to replace the beach house or the southwest wing with in place. We think with the construction that's going to actually occur, it's going to be less impactful to the existing historic structures that are located on New Jersey Avenue. We'd like to get to that, and we think it's relevant to determine whether or not the demolition of the beach house and the southwest wing is appropriate under these circumstances, because there's certain things that are going to happen. Driveways are going to be eliminated that are currently existing to both the beach house and to the southwest wing, which will eliminate vehicular traffic, which will have we think, a demonstrable benefit to that section of the historic district. So we came in here tonight intending to give the commission an overview of what we would like to present for development. And obviously, part and parcel of that would be the demolition of the structures that we're proposing. We haven't been able to get to C yet because we've been asked to demonstrate A and B.
Well, you will be given the opportunity to present that information. That's why you're here. I would share with you, though, that it's an independent decision by the Historic Preservation Commission. That's why the demolition is not unusual in this case. This is our process. This is our procedure. Demolitions are heard independent. So if you want to continue and you want to...
But one thing I just want to clarify on that, Chairman, is that I don't know how the commission can conclude that this is an appropriate transition without knowing what it's going to be replaced with.
Well, you could say that about anything that in the city.
That's correct.
And that's not the way...
I think the criteria allow you to make a determination without having to know what follows. And we've always treated them that way. You may have a different view, but, you make your points, and if you prevail on those points, then I think we can make that decision without knowing your future plans. And there is, this was an A, and then there's a B, right, with respect to a second demolition?
That's
correct.
Prior to the conceptual relating to the replacement
Correct.
stuff. So do I understand that you don't want to go for B tonight?
We'll see.
Are we in mode of tabling this whole thing?
I don't know.
Well, maybe they'll tell us.
Mr. Chair, I would certainly want to consider giving them a chance to give us an education on exactly what they want to do there, to see if any of our members feel like, well, that would be a vast improvement over what we have and would clean up the issues here and with that improvement.
I don't believe it can, Tom.
Well, I think we're in a bit, I think we'd be in a little bit better shape if we're come into this as open-minded as we can. And I am open-minded because, I spent a lot of time today studying the demolition and looking at this, and rode my bike up there and went all around the property. And so, I was envisioning the new. I've also been doing this since 1971 when I chaired the planning board, so I've had a lot of experience with new construction.
And no one's taking that away. It's just not part of the record of the demolition because we weren't given the opportunity to address it. That's all.
If the applicant would just advise us what you want to do.
We're going to come back if we could. We'd like to file some Oprah requests to obtain more records with respect to the beach house and present the demolition. I know you've already voted. We would ask you to reconsider it and then proceed with a vote, hopefully, on the demolition of the southwest wing and then proceed with the conceptual approval.
So you want us to table this?
Yes.
And you waive the 45 days?
We do.
Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to table the application, and I assume that that covers the entire application. We're free to revisit the refused demolition when you come back. But motion to table.
I'll second that.
Are you tabling both applications or just the demolition application?
No, everything.
The three applications.
Yeah, I guess it is three.
The
I
two
had
demolition-
Wait.
Combined.
And then
It's only two left as I count it, but we're willing to look at it again. But motion to table the applications.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll. Yes. Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Ms. Basagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Strodick.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is open to the public. Not seeing any public, I will close that and we move to discussion points. The first discussion point is the advisory reports.
Oh, that's
It's our standards. I think it's ours.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Glad they didn't leave with that. Okay, advisory reports, you've had a chance to look at those. You all have copies of them. I don't know. Jim, you had put some more.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to speak to the issue, I will briefly, Warren. It's just with respect to the template. I mean, since we've been having a really busy season with respect to presentations by the city and its projects, I think we all decided it would be good to try and develop a template that would be helpful in the commission's presentation and writing and delivery to the city of the advisory reports we're required to give by ordinance. And so what you had in front of you was an attempted draft to show that template. And if you remember at the last meeting, Warren said I should try to cut it back a little bit. And I know it still looks a little on the long side, but I did cut it back a bit. And this is not with the idea that this is an in-stone situation that must be slavishly followed in the sense that all the A's, B's, and C's have to be touched, but it's a suggested template of the way advisory reports could be written and delivered to the city. And one of the reasons why it is the way it is harkens back to the conversation I had with the two staff members of SHPO when we did our little seminar. And they said to me that, of course, they take into consideration the views expressed by the HPC on projects that are brought up to them in application. And I said, well, we do a lot of work on these things. We work very hard. And we evidence this in an advisory report. And we'd sure like you to consider our view really importantly. And they said they would. But I got the impression that what they really meant was the more thoroughly we documented what we did, and the more seriously they'd take it. And what you see is an attempt to try and put a format together that does that. And in terms of giving the city that advisory report, we had a commentary, a few of you commented. One of the comments I received was from Pip, who said she was afraid that in doing this kind of thing, it might discourage the city from doing a lot of things simultaneously, because I suggested that it would be great to get the ducks in order, get the HPC to pronounce and report on a project, and use that report when approaching SHPO. And I don't think this precludes that, but my view really is that if the city starts off with us, and if we do a good job and we give a good advisory report and it's thorough and complete and it follows a format, the city should be able to use that with SHPO and attempt to persuade the state that their project is valid and should be approved. So anyway, what you have is the suggested format for that type of advisory report. And I should also say that since we have a new solicitor, not only will this form, but also the conceptual notice that we're probably going to talk about has to be run by our solicitor for his further comment.
I'm prepared to comment on this. Mr. Testa, I think this is a great format, and the reason for that is I think the state needs to really take our HPC more seriously with its decision-making. The thought process that goes into commenting on city projects and the background information, the design standards that the city follows, I really think that should be given deference. That's the conversation you and I had.
We did at the very day.
And I think having this type of detail, multiple page document of these are the standards that we considered when we reviewed this, I think can only help the city's presentation of a project if it's favorable.
Well, we really did think it would play fairly well in Trenton, so that was the purpose of it.
My only suggestion would be, and this is not the HPC's role necessarily to adjudicate State Historic Preservation Office applications, but they speak a certain language in terms of, is this an encroachment or not? Is this an undertaking or not? And to the extent that I think there's a lot of overlap with those things, I think they should afford us deference. I don't know how much they do, but with this type of detail, and I think it can only help those types of things. So I think it's a good format.
And should we do these and present it to the city? There's no reason why the city just can't take that and make it as an exhibit. Even if it's not filed initially, it can be added on to its SHPO application.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it, is it's a template that can be used over and over again. And the clarity of it, I think, is really remarkable, particularly with regard to the conclusions.
Yeah, and of course, though, John, it's only going to be as good as what we write.
Of course.
This is just the outline, right? I mean,
Yep.
makes recitations, but it's as good as what we actually write.
No, and this is, we asked you to reduce it, and you did. And I think this is a big improvement. I appreciate your work on this project.
Yeah,
So I mean, it's a huge effort, and I think the question is what we had discussed before was that we were going to look to Judy to complete this, and I don't think that's a reasonable expectation.
I think you may be thinking about the conceptual approval notice rather than the
Yeah,
advisory. I think the advisory report has to come from a senior officer of the,
Completion of the-
which is to say you.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have it drafted however you want, but I think it needs to have the chair of the commission.
Well, no, and as you know, I've already embraced some of those thoughts in the most recent advisory letters, if you.
Yeah. I mean, and to make it part of the HPC inventory, I mean, if I were to pose this, I would say that I would ask for us to approve the form, but we would give the latitude to the writer to use the judgment in carrying it out, although some things are pretty basic, reciting that it's the advisory report, saying who appeared, those kinds of things. But I don't mean to try and weld this into a form that can never be changed. It's really more, in my view, a template. So,
Well,
formal or informal.
No, I support this. I think this is a big improvement over what we've been doing, and it's an improvement over your initial draft, so thank you. We don't need a motion for this. We can all agree that we're accepting this as the format? Yes?
Fine by me. I mean, it's the chair's prerogative.
Do you have a thought on that?
It's a working document. If we
Yeah,
do a few of them.
It
we
can't
might-
hurt to do a motion, and the motion could be, from here on out, advisory reports will substantially conform to the template that Mr. Testa has prepared.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
I'm going to vote yes because I like company as opposed to the demolition.
Ms. Bisagno.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick.
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson.
Yes.
Mr. Becker.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next project that we have undertaken is to provide better communications on conceptual approval. This was also discussed at length the last time, and a lot of work has gone into this document as well. Chris, so to bring you up on this, the question was, when we approve something conceptual, and we approve it conceptual with conditions, and then the applicant goes before zoning or planning and say, well, we have HPC approval without mentioning the conditions. And so we've tried to.
And Chris has already commented on this draft.
Yeah.
He was covered on circulation, already commented on it, and there, in reaction, I didn't include a specific period for the reapplication because we hadn't settled on. Your comment was to the effect that would be better to be enforceable if we included the period by which you had to reapply in it. And I don't know that we've actually settled what that is, but our envision was that it would be by motion or regulation of the bylaws or something like that, rather than put it into the notice. So the revised document does incorporate Bob Feinberg's view that when we communicate this to applicants, they should know that it's a limited thing. Conceptual approval is limited, and it doesn't do more than say this is consistent with our design standards.
And it's not a vehicle to get a construction permit either, which I think, there's a lot of people that know that. There's maybe some people on our boards for some years that didn't recognize that because applicants were coming in and saying, we have HPC approval. It's like, what does that mean?
And it's also funny because we communicate approvals in review. We communicate the final approvals by giving them resolutions. We have never had a communication of conceptual review approval. Is that right, folks? We've never.
It doesn't get a resolution.
Right, so there's this void hanging out there capable of being abused by people who can say, well, the HPC approved my.
Or misunderstood.
Yeah, so again, I apologize for the length, but this is to tell you what a limited thing conceptual approval is. And a number of you said, well, we as the commission staff ought to be forwarding this to other boards. So I tried to write that in, but there are situations where someone will come out of conceptual approval and we won't know that they're going to other boards. And so we put on them also the onus of taking this with them for their other board.
Plus, the other boards are responsible for getting a transcript if they need it from these meetings. I mean, for them to be cavalier and just.
So when they go to another board, this is going to go with it. This is going to travel with that. But if they don't go with another board or they somehow do it later, we want to also put, a number of you said, we want to put the onus on the applicant also to inform the other boards. So,
But I thought what we originally discussed is that we would also send this.
it does. It begins by saying we're going to send it. But then it says if it isn't indicated that you're going there, you have a responsibility to bring it anyway.
And the other positive about this is, look, you have this built into the new design standards. It's always been there. It's in the city code. You have these informal reviews. But you have something now that's a printable document that looks different than a resolution or certificate of appropriateness. So it's going to help avoid these situations where people say, hey, it's all squared. I got it before the board, but there's no document attached to it that looks like the final product, which is that resolution, the certificate of appropriateness.
And now there will be. And then the last thing, and it may be a little gratuitous, but I decided that we would put in the things that you aren't supposed to do, which is to tell people that you got something other than conceptual approval, and you did things by misrepresenting what it is you had. So that's sort of it. And it was, at least it was my view, that because this was reflecting action of the commission, that it would be sent by our secretary as an office, essentially like a certification, sent by the same person who sends the notices of approval and review.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, if I might, Chris.
Speak up, though, please.
Yeah, if I'm signing this and sending this, I'm going to use the wording that's in the motion that comes from Chris, because we don't want any discrepancy between what I hear and what I write down and I'm noting and what everyone else understands. And I think Chris could be the final authority on what the conditions actually are. So when we make a motion for conceptual based on conditions, if you could just make sure you repeat the motion at that meeting, I will take the exact wording of your motion for this letter.
And that's precisely why I repeated that on the Ramos application tonight.
And that becomes Exhibit A. As to the second page, if you look, Judy, that attachment becomes Exhibit A to your notice.
Shouldn't we also?
Look at page 2 as you go through. You give the signature, and then you give the particulars.
Turn your mic on.
And you'll see there's a conditions and recommendations with an attachment for Exhibit A, which would be what you just said to Chris.
So, for instance, the application that we heard tonight, that would be reconfiguring
Right, Catherine's.
the windows. Revise the 3 windows, horizontal to vertical, without the X bracing.
Exactly.
Yeah, whatever's in the motion, basically.
Also, one other thing, if approved, will we give formal notice to these boards that this will be the official memorandum we would give to them?
That would be the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But they should be notified.
Jake, if we know that we're going there, then that's where this should go. This should go with whatever records are being transmitted, but it should go there on our own steam.
So we will use this then for Ramo, because she said they are going to the zoning board.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
And shouldn't we, and I think that's what you were commenting on, shouldn't we notify planning and zoning that we're doing this, so that when someone comes before them, they would expect to see this?
well, they're going to receive it both from the applicant and from us. is the intention of what
Well,
this
I
is.
think we get cued when, when they say, by the way, we've got to go to the planning board.
Yeah.
We know when
I
we
know.
grant them conceptual approval,
But-
this is going to go with,
But I don't see the downside of advising, especially zoning, that on conceptual, they should be seeing
Correct.
this documentation. If they don't see it, if they don't have it, there's an
There's
administrative.
probably,
and my intention is we would circulate it as broadly as necessary.
They do have
Wherever
they have a
we can
meeting
send it.
this week.
so,
Go into the application.
To confirm that, because there can be some lag between the following meeting and when they.
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it the intent of this, that this is the type of thing that the board wants on a conceptual approval to confirm the conditions so that the secretary is authorized to issue this
Yeah.
subsequent to the meeting,
Yeah,
not waiting for.
I think so because we'd like to fire this one out as fast as we fire approvals and review.
Right.
Interim communication by email, when it goes out to the applicant, it should go out to the other boards.
Because ultimately, you want this in front of the planning or zoning board to say, this is what we did.
Yep, you're right.
Not a characterization or some other statement about it. This is, you can see it in black and white.
So this will be sent to the applicant and to Karen Keenan, who's the board secretary, right? Okay,
yep.
right
So-
after the meeting.
Well, as soon as you get the conditions locked in.
Get it to you.
So I think this is great, although paragraph number 3, the one that's bolded, I find really confusing, but it could be cleaned up super fast, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and basically, I would suggest that after the beginning of the fourth line for your project, you go right down to, you are required to furnish a complete copy of this notice to all bodies or persons. Additionally, HPC will forward a complete copy of this notice to all such persons and bodies and be done with it. That way, the onus is first and foremost put on them, and by the way, we're also going to submit this to those bodies.
I have no problem with that.
Because regardless of any contrary, that.
Well, I was just trying to avoid
got confused.
well, that's because you're an architect.
I know, that's because I'm not an attorney.
Seriously, that's fine. I mean, as
I'm
far as
easily
I'm concerned,
confused.
it's fine. It's to maximize the circulation.
It already says.
Well, it kind of says it, but not in John's thoughts.
I
mean, we can
was
make
just
it-
trying to simplify it.
Usually, we know because they've indicated that
Correct.
they're going for other approvals.
Right.
So that is a trip for us to tell us that this is definitely going out from the HPC to that other board. But sometimes they don't tell us stuff. So that's what the second sentence was intended to do, regardless of the fact you didn't tell us. If in fact you do go, then you are required to present this document.
Yeah, but if the first statement simply ends with, you are required to furnish a complete copy of this, then they know they must do it. Oh, and by the way, we're going to send one too.
And that's sort of the way it was before the comments,
No,
before the
I'm-
last meeting.
Maybe I'm missing your point.
Yeah.
The sentence before that, in the middle, it says, "The commission will forward a complete copy of this notice to all such bodies or persons."
Correct. All I'm saying is put that at the bottom and take out the regardless of any, because the regardless of any really confused me. I had no idea what that was
Yeah,
trying to do.
I'm, no problem.
Yeah.
The goal is to make sure that they know that wherever they're going, they have to present.
Bottom line, all we're doing is making it really simple. You are required to submit this. We're also.
May I suggest that we just let Chris solve this and take the language and make it work so that there is a compulsory need for the applicant to give this, and that's the way it'll come out.
Okay.
I mean, the fact is, we should have a backstop in case they fail to do it. And that's what this was attempting to
I
do.
would also like to interject that I think we need to add something on the website about this, because this is actually something new that wasn't in our consideration when we did the design standard language. And we have this little flow chart, and it tells what happens after this happens and that happens. And when I read this, I think, yeah, the lawyers are going to get it. Anybody who knows that they're going to have to defend something legally is going to understand this. But I think a lot of applicants won't get the message. They won't understand
Well, they're certainly going to
the
get an email.
process.
They're going to get an email.
But I think
that says-
we want to head off unpleasant interactions ahead of time. We don't want people wandering down and getting into trouble. People who represent that they got a conceptual review, everything's hunky-dory, half the time, I would bet they really think that they can just go ahead and change this or that. It wasn't that important. They're getting that kind of feedback from tradesmen and other people.
I don't think anybody here objects to making sure that's clearly disclosed. I'm interested in giving the document that binds them to do that thing.
Right. But I think we also need to make maybe a FAQ on the website, just something that says, when you get conceptual approval, this is what you're going to get this.
And I don't want to cut that, but can we leave this in the hands of the solicitor to determine how this goes, mandatorily, backup, whatever? I mean,
Put it on Chris.
I think you get the idea of what's going on.
Everyone will get a copy of this first try at it from Judy, and then we can see how it works out from there. But I think I can distill down some of the
Yeah.
comments from the board tonight.
Did I give you?
There's a Word
There's a
document.
word master.
Yeah.
You pick up the word master and you've got it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
quite a few meetings ago, we did have a discussion as to how long our conceptual approvals were good for. And that's because Judy's office was overflowing
Yes,
with
right.
people who got a conceptual, weren't coming back, and that it just increases the chances of what we're doing to get to the zoning board or the planning board could be lost in the way. Judy
Do you remember what we decided?
decided as to how long a conceptual should be good.
We
I
were,
think a conceptual should not be good for more than a year.
just the point was, we were once trying to integrate that. We were thinking about revising the instructions, right, to the filing of the application. And in that, it was saying, if you neglect your application for X, it's going to be deemed to be a new application when you come back again.
But the applications, an approved application, is only good for 2 years, right? And so isn't it?
And that's, and Mr. Chairman, just to add something to that, that's consistent with our current city code, which, in terms of variances, when people go to the zoning board and they get a variance, that expires after 2 years, too.
So-
That's a good measuring stick, because
Yeah,
after
okay.
that, you might be getting far afield from what's going on.
So conceptual would fall under that same 2-year
That's less
banner,
confusing if it stays at 2 years.
right?
I mean, it is. The question is, do you want to clean house faster than that?
Judy would
Yes.
like that.
Well, I think 2 years is reasonable. I mean, some people just can't get things done in a year. 2 years is plenty of time.
Yeah.
I personally think it's long, but that's fine with me. It's not my burden.
I don't have a problem keeping it for 2 years, and then it's consistent with a final, so.
And that may work into your point about the fact that you first wanted something like that articulated in the first paragraph, if I remember your comment, right?
So that would work, and that would put a leash on it, so to speak, so. This is one of I don't want to say easier, but in terms of like work to get to this board, you don't have to do 200-foot noticing, things like that. So it is, I feel less, it's not as tough on applicants to have to come back to this board. I mean, it's not fun to go before a board, but.
Oh, we've obviously proven that.
Well, I really agree with Janice's remarks. If you have never gone before one of these boards, it is confusing. The paperwork is tough, knowing how to present, what to be careful of. That's why so many people say, I'm taking a lawyer with me. I'm not,
It's called
I
professional
really-
guidance.
Yeah, professional guidance.
Professional guidance.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do make people very nervous, even though our book tries to spell it out. They generally prefer to turn it over to somebody else.
If they can afford it.
Okay,
So we're going to leave the notice of conceptual approval finalization to our solicitor to finalize.
you're going
And
to
the-
wordsmith and do the 2-year thing?
Yes. The expiration, the 2-year expiration will just be a standard condition on Exhibit A then. That
Right.
will be incorporated in every approval.
Good. And then we'll finalize that at our next meeting.
Great.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Parking beneath residential buildings. This is really geared towards some of the things that we see in Avalon and Stone Harbor, where houses are built on stilts and people just arbitrarily park under them. And then we've just further tightened it up as we went. And this covers that. So the question is, have you had a chance to review this, and does anyone have comments?
So a little background. The one I emailed to everybody earlier in the week, Jim did, I think, some significant improvements to the language, which is why I printed out a revised version of it that I think is much clearer and better language. And on the second page, by the way, on the back, is really this resulted from going into the zoning ordinance and looking at all the different zoning districts and all the different use types and seeing where would or would not be appropriate. Therefore, I thought it was important for you guys to assess this, to be able to see those definitions as extracted directly from the zoning ordinance. And all of those uses, residential uses, are included. So notice this would not include, for example, hotels and motels. So the parking, what we saw tonight, beneath Lemaire would not be something that the zoning ordinance would prohibit. And the only other thing was attached to that email that I sent out to you guys, I think it was Friday or Thursday, was also just a brief memo to City Council stating that the flood adaptation ordinance that was approved in 2021 talked about flood mitigation for historic structures and that they should not be raised merely to accommodate parking, but it didn't at all address new construction or other structures. Therefore, HPC is thinking that a recommendation to change the zoning ordinance and modify it accordingly is in fact, this language is, from my perspective, and this is why I'm hoping you guys can chime in whether you agree or not, is in alignment with our new HPC standards.
Yeah, and we should remind, and especially the new folks, but we should remind everyone, we're talking about making a recommendation to City Council for the city of Cape May. The historic district, the local historic district, already has ordinances and things in place.
This is citywide zoning ordinance.
Right.
In fact, it's intended to be, and I don't know how you do this, actually, Chris. It's an amendment to an existing
John, he'll
Section 525.
He'll figure it out.
Yeah.
He'll figure it
I
out.
don't know how you do it, but, yeah.
But I mean, it's.
City Council. But the process for that, just outline that, would go to the planning board first for master plan consistency review. So this board could potentially make a recommendation, and Councilwoman Baldwin and I could funnel that towards the planning board. I think council would probably want to get master plan consistency review before we even considered an ordinance, just to see what the comments are back.
So is it appropriate that this memo be addressed to City Council as it
Yes.
currently is?
Yes,
And then we would forward it
Okay.
to the
yeah. It's city council. We're minding somebody else's business. I mean, we're, with good intentions, I mean, we're.
Just not unusual.
But these are questions that are coming up.
One says with great humility.
The other issue here is whether it belongs in here or not. And that is elevating properties in the city beyond the FEMA requirements of 10 feet on the first floor, 8 feet plus 2.
I think that was covered, Mr. Chairman, I think that was covered in the original ordinance back in 2021. Do you have that there, John?
I do have a copy of that ordinance.
The one from the HPC.
The original ordinance that was approved in 2021.
That's
That was-
for the local historic district.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one in 2021 is,
And
it's 4/10/2021.
I think there was discussion in that to not raise it beyond that because you ended up with situations like you're
Yeah.
referring
And
to.
now we're talking about the city as a whole.
Right, as a whole. Yeah, it just refers
Because
to
just
historic district.
confirm my understanding of these regulations. If we talk about the historic district for 1 second, we have the design standards, both the 2021 amendments and the new design standards as of 2023 address this concept of lifting a structure
Right.
to meet flood elevation, but not reaching a point so you can just add parking under there. And that would apply to alterations, raising,
Yes.
or a new structure. If
Yes.
a new building came before this
Right.
board.
So the question is whether,
To expand it.
what started this conversation was, I believe, the city council should embrace that same standard for the city.
For the whole city, is what you're saying.
For the local historic district, we have it, it's already covered. But I think it would help this document.
Couple things. Looking at the ordinance from 2021 does not specifically address the limitations on height in terms of 10 feet. I mean, it's right here, there's a copy of it. There's not anything in here that addresses specifically that it can't be more than 1 foot above the 1 foot freeboard number.
Well, it has to come before us.
Correct.
And
So what I'm saying is that if you want to address that, it currently is not addressed. The other thing that this is trying to do is this is not just the historic district, this is the entire town and new construction.
Yeah, I know, but wait a minute. We've done a lot of work. We have standards, we have ordinances for
Correct.
the local historic district, for the HPC. So I don't agree at all that we're going to provide a document for the whole city that would then apply for the historic district, the local historic district.
I must have missed the point. I thought the current exercise was to develop, and I'm speaking with respect to parking,
Yeah.
that the current exercise was to develop a regimen that would apply outside the historic district as well. It would apply to the entire city of Cape May with some exceptions.
That's the intention.
2 zones.
2 zones.
And then different uses.
Correct.
But that's, I thought, where we're going.
That's right.
So it wouldn't change anything for the historic district.
Nothing.
It would expand.
It would
that
expand
concept out.
it and clarify.
Yeah.
That's what I think we all want.
Because I mean, we're not fans of parking outside the historic district in ways that are different from parking inside the historic district. So that I think was the basis for where we were going.
Part of the
And-
National Historic Landmark.
Well, it was the idea about residential
I don't think
protection.
that's different than what I said, but that's fine.
So the only, but what you were asking, though, is a good question. And I'm not sure whether or not this particular document should address the limitation on height, since this is specifically about parking. Maybe that should be a second one.
I don't know that you necessarily want to plug that in, because there is a state statute that regulates.
So it does, and what's interesting about that state statute is it actually conflicts a little bit with the way we've been doing it.
Yeah, that's not good.
And it's not good.
Well, and that's been the subject of some prior applications, I know
Correct.
that. But that has to be reckoned with when those applications come in, and there's always going to be that tension. Now, there's the opportunity for this board to review those types of things and say, okay, we only want to bring it to what the state allows us to, but that doesn't necessarily mean the bottom of the building turns into a parking lot, which is where this board can chime in and say, do you still want to do that?
What this does is that this prohibits that from happening regardless of what that height limit is.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. The key is we're dealing with parking, and it doesn't matter how tall your house is, how it's been elevated, is it short, is it tall, is it higher? It's no parking.
So
You can't park under habitable space, decks, or porches.
there's no question that that type of thing could be regulated or converted into an ordinance, but I think what would be helpful if the board wants to send this type of recommendation up for potential planning board review is the why. And not to say that it's not been articulated somewhere, but that discussion.
That's what's in the memo.
Yeah.
Right. But we're in a meeting right now. That's what I'm saying. People listening, what's the why? And that's a rhetorical question,
So
John. but yeah.
my question to you is, do you think this memo is adequate in explaining the why?
Yes. I just wanted to see if anybody had, it was more like to get the discussion going. in case-
I didn't want to come right out and say, we don't want to become Avalon or Wildwood or,
Well, no,
Right.
But you have, you've just said.
Well,
it.
have said, right.
But the idea is to kind of expand some of the positive streetscape elements of the HPC outward, even if you're not in the HPC, and recognize we don't want cars everywhere in the front yard. And that all makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we would not want the planning board or the city council to just think we said this stuff without a good explanation of why we were saying it, consistent with what our practice has been. We don't like parking under. It's just not, it's not consistent with the.
So there are two
I have a
paragraphs in this
question.
memo. That
I have a question for you architects who understand this stuff. So we live next to Regent Beach. Nobody was happy that Windsor Hotel burned down and it was built. But I have to say that the parking solution for Regent Beach is very successful. They dug down, they put parking underneath, and aesthetically, it doesn't interrupt the streetscape. It looks like a nice place to live. The people who live there and rent those places have plenty of parking. And I don't understand whether our recommendations would eliminate that as a possibility.
What's its use?
It's
Multiple use
condominiums.
Condo, it's a condo.
That is not listed here.
Right.
So it would be permitted.
It would be permitted.
There are also ones
This
that
is
are
only-
around there. They
this
have-
is only
they have an
residential.
advantage in Being able to
Well,
put it,
Regent Beach is residential.
yeah, uh-huh.
I
Well, no,
just,
it's a-
I would
on
love
an
to see
individual
us
property.
come up with more aesthetically positive parking suggestions. And I think that would be a real contribution. I mean, people in Cape May have been arguing and trying to fix the parking issue for, well, it's a historic argument. We haven't come up with any real solutions
Yeah,
yet.
so you're asking a really good question, because it's a nuance that is really unpacked by reading the definitions of use. So, for example,
Would you talk into the mic?
yeah, so for example, if you look on page 2 of this, a multifamily dwelling is a building other than an attached dwelling that is designed to accommodate 3 or more dwelling units within a single structure. So that one might want to be eliminated from this. So an attached dwelling is a 3 to 6 family dwelling constructed in a row, blah, blah, blah. So if it's less than 6 units, then it would be not permitted based upon this language and this definition. So that's what we need some clarity about. Where do we want to draw that line?
Also, it relates to new construction,
Correct.
as
Right.
opposed to the Regent Beaches of the world, which are extant now with their combo of under and parking lot service.
Right, because it is a good solution.
It was a good solution, and the fact is, yes, it is a little bit higher, and you don't have to worry about that, because they're not going to be allowed to put parking below if it isn't high enough. But the problem, what we're looking at is, we don't want houses raised way up, so we have this visible parking garage at eye level, at pedestrian level, that basically makes the pedestrian experience really unpleasant.
So I think what you're proposing, Janice, is that we would cross out multifamily dwellings from this. Or we could say multifamily dwellings,
You know, it's
Of-
not the greatest idea to draft here by committee.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't have
But
to
we
work on
should, we
this.
should think about what the important uses are. I believe our thinking started with the idea that there were commercial establishments, hotels, motels, which could only operate if there were parking underneath them. That was feasible, and those people should continue to operate that way. And somewhere between that and some residential structures, we had to draw the line about what's acceptable for parking under a structure.
Correct, so what,
And that's a pretty hard line that's been drawn there.
it is, and it's just using the existing definitions. Another thing we could do is we could create another hybrid version by saying, for example, just as a way to look for a hybrid solution, is multifamily dwelling with 4 or less units, or some number.
Yeah, I don't know what the right number is. I just
neither.
also wanted to say, John alluded to the fact that I had, that I had circulated some comments on this when he sent it out on Friday-ish, Saturday. And I did not try to change any of the uses to which this would apply. But one of the things that I didn't agree with and that I think you got wrong was the idea about the garages facing facing garages.
Well, you cleaned that up really well.
I did, but
Yeah.
the reason being that you can see a garage from a lot of angles.
A lot of places, yeah.
And we would be draconian if we did not just say, no front-facing garage, no frontage-facing garages. I mean,
It clarifies, so that language was taken directly from the flood ordinance, and it's not as clear as
yeah,
what
I mean, we would be crazy to try and say you can't have a garage if it can be seen from any angle except the back of your house.
So the language you proposed, I think, is great.
Yeah, so but I just wanted to say that was all I intended to do, and to just separate out your districts. It was more a technical part on the first part. What uses are subject to this is up for the.
Would you turn your mic on? And
The way it's written today, you know the condos that are in a row across from Riggins, as you turn on Washington to go onto Lafayette?
Yeah.
Those garages face the street.
Correct.
Would you allow the construction of that building today under these new regs?
Well, it depends how we define that. If the way this is written right now, no, we would not.
But that's in the exempted district.
But that's in the exempted district, so that would be, yes, they would be permitted in that location.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you picked one, Kevin. You picked one, Kevin, where the map of the district actually allows
I
that.
was thinking also the one, as you go down Beach Avenue, like you're heading towards Peter Shields.
Yeah.
There's that little tight condo complex that sort of has an angle to it. It's
You mean
right-
around Reading? Reading?
That has parking garages underneath it. Now, they're parking into like a courtyard rather than facing out onto the street. You go into a kind of an interior courtyard and the buildings open off that. That, I would assume, would also not be permitted under this, with maybe the caveat that it opens in that courtyard rather than straight out at the street.
Yeah, how many units are in that complex?
There must be at least 10, 15.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So that's why I'm suggesting that because that seems like a reasonable solution as well, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking that, so right now, as a multifamily dwelling, that would not be permitted. So I'm suggesting maybe, since attached dwellings are limited to 6 units, maybe that's the magic number, 6.
But he's addressing it, he's addressing forward-facing garages.
Correct.
Not under structure parking.
Well, but he is doing both.
They are?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, he's addressing both.
I must have the wrong condos.
So it sounds like where we're headed is,
Actually, even the ones, as you go down Washington, that new building that was
Yep.
built, the front building does not have parking facing the street.
Right.
But if you go down this driveway behind it, I know there's garages under the back structure, and I don't know if they come forward as well. I guess.
they came before us, and we hid the parking.
correct.
They had sufficient land on both sides of that building to have an in, hide your cars and out.
Right.
So it sounds like that somewhere between 4 or 6 units, I'm going to suggest 6, because that's a bigger number than quads, and quads are pretty common, that we simply prohibit it for residential structures with less than 6 units, 6 units or less. And of course, one could always pursue a variance. I mean, if you can make a compelling argument such as that,
I don't disagree, but I'm not, so what happens if you have 7 units? Then
you can.
you can have front end?
No, not
bigger,
front.
The bigger the structure, the more it tends to not look residential. I mean,
Correct.
that's the way I'm phrasing it. It begins to look more like a commercial
Or a
building,
hotel.
more like a hotel or motel.
No, Warren, to answer your question, though, item number 3 would always prohibit garages from facing the street, regardless of what function it is or
Right.
use. Yeah.
John, I have a question. The ones that are across Riggins, those garages are not on the principal street. They're on a side street.
Yep,
So they'd be allowed then?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
As long as there were, if we were going to use the number 6, as long as there were more than 6 units there.
I think 6, maybe 6.
But
yeah.
again, those are.
I don't know how many they have.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with the new one that's turned sideways on Lafayette Street,
Okay.
right? The one that was, I guess that's between Jefferson and, the new white one that's.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That actually is handled pretty well also, because it's the same thing that Kevin was talking about, where you enter a courtyard and then turn and park. And that, there's at least 6 units there.
But again, to try to draw another example, as you come down Madison, there is a house on the, if you head towards the beach on Madison, sorry, I get my directions straight, there's a house on the left that has a 3-car garage today. It faces onto Cape May Ave, maybe.
It is on Cape, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It is on
May Ave,
Cape,
but
yes.
The garage is open
Yeah,
towards
well,
Madison. You know, so
Bellini's, yeah.
it's a 3-car side garage that, you know, and that's a.
But that's a detached garage, that's not addressed here. A detached garage is not addressed here.
It's attached.
It's attached.
Oh,
So you're saying it's a corner property?
It is.
Yeah, so you can't not have garages on both sides.
correct.
The question is, pick a front.
Right,
Pick a
and they're
frontage.
two big streets.
That's
so-
where you can't have the garage.
But it is a street-facing garage nevertheless.
Yeah,
Right.
but one of the streets of the two.
Right, that is correct. And theoretically, if you go down Columbia, there's a beautiful old Victorian kind of yellow house. It has a double lot. I mean, it's very easy for them to make the argument, well, I should have a garage that opens, you know, off onto whatever the side street is there. I don't know.
But also, a corner lot also has 2 other sides to the property that they
So I
could
think
have
that's why Jim
that are
used the
sort of hidden.
terminology principal street.
Yeah, I mean, the principal street, you pick your frontage, it's the principal street, you can't have a garage facing that. If you're on a side street because you're on a corner lot, you get a garage. You don't have to go all the way around your house to get into a garage.
But it does affect, you know, the streetscape of the people living on that side street equally as bad as if it's on the front of the property.
Oh,
Nothing's perfect.
It does.
I think we're ready to
Well,
send
but-
this to the planning board.
but there is one more distinction. So Kevin, there is another distinction to your question. If the garage is an attached garage, but doesn't have any deck, porch, or habitable space above it, that would be permitted.
Okay? Yeah, and that would be the case on the Madison
Correct.
property.
Yeah, there's a number of houses in town and that would not have been unusual. It would have been, you know, an attached carriage house that then became a garage, right?
I mean, a good one is the example of the house that's for sale on the little street that turns from Lafayette onto Washington. It's
Yeah.
a corner house there. There's a garage with a habitable space above it that opens up onto that side street where you connect from Lafayette to Washington. Under this circumstance, that would not be.
Would not be permitted. So what we don't want to do is prohibit attached garages. Right. At least that's what I'm proposing.
So where are we with this? We've had a lot of discussion now.
Do you want a small committee to work with you, maybe, and then finalize it and come back?
Be happy to. Yeah.
I mean,
'Cause
Well, remember, when this goes to city council and planning, I mean, they're,
right, but we want to give them our reasons, I mean, all of the different things that we discussed here tonight, and I put it in a concise document, you know, in a complete document, and then send it off.
Yeah, so what'd be great, I mean, I think what I'm hearing is we need to make really just one modification to this, and that is less than 6 units, right? Which would modify F. We could say multifamily dwellings with less than 6 dwelling units. And then clarify the memo to address why is it 6 units, and I could use some help with that language. And Jim, you said something about, at some point, once you get to 6 units, the scale of it is no longer.
Well, I mean, we all have different views, but when you see something of that size, it begins to look to you less like a house and a residence than a commercial property, something of great bulk. I mean, how I would draw that line, 6 may be the right number, I wouldn't object to it, but that's my thought.
Yep.
It doesn't look residential.
So Lorraine, if, I'm sensing we have pretty much alignment and consensus here, But what would be really helpful is if you would help me with the memo, since you're actually the
She
liaison. with
can't,
something
she
else.
can't be on both sides of this. She's going to have to actually pass on your
Well,
thing.
but she's actually, if she's an advocate for this. that
Well,
would
if
be
you're
great.
willing to sign off,
Write the
if you're
memo.
willing to sign off on it, that's great.
I was just suggesting.
Would you be willing to help me with that memo?
Yeah, I don't see a conflict there.
Is there a conflict?
No.
I don't think there's a conflict there.
at all. What this is about is getting the communication, right? So that.
Right.
So it moves on to the next
Because
step.
ultimately, when this gets, find its way to the planning.
And
board,
simplified and streamlined.
I can only
So,
say, I
yeah.
hope you'll persuade yourself when you get.
John, I have one final question. My phone was ringing, and so I was looking for it, but I had heard Janice say that, about Regent Beach with all the wonderful parking under that. So, and then we thought it would be under multifamily dwellings. So what would you put it on under now?
So that's what I'm saying. That's why these definitions are really important, because multifamily dwellings, the way they're defined is.
That would be Regent Beach.
Well, the way they're defined is, they have 3 or more units. What I'm saying is, 4 and 5 is okay, or is not okay, but 6 would be, which would be.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The bigger ones would be permitted, the smaller ones would not.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Ultimately, all of this is geared towards residential uses under 6 units. So we have semi-detached dwelling, tourist get.
That's it.
Right.
We're really talking about, are you a residential use under 6 units? If you are, this is what we're looking to do.
And so, exactly. Simply stated.
Yeah. Just we have to streamline it, make it much more simplistic.
Well, but I think it's important to use the definitions that are in the zoning ordinance, because it's going to be in the zoning ordinance, and for professionals who are using that, they're used to looking at different sections and looking at definitions, and that makes it really, really clear, using the context of the zoning ordinance itself, I think.
For example, the natural question of this is, well, how am I going to build a hotel in the commercial district? And the answer is
It's permitted use,
it's not in there.
right?
Yeah.
But we are still looking for all kinds of ways to screen that property. Even with the Icona that didn't go up, had a very wonderful way of screening.
But that's
everything.
elsewhere in the zoning ordinance, by the way.
Because they needed
Screening.
6, 7, 8 stories to do that. But
I'd like to bring up another.
This is for the city limits.
Yeah.
I mean, in the historic district, they're still going to come before us.
I just
That's
have
why I
one
want to
other
be careful. We don't,
related question. We went through an example of something that may or may not apply to this, which was with a 913 Beach Avenue, a historic structure that lost its contributing status, was raised to have parking underneath. We spent a lot of time going back and forth with these people. There were 11 units, so in this definition, they would have been permitted to put parking underneath. Am I right? or
Not
am I-
necessarily. If they're in the historic district, they'd still have to adhere to those regulations.
Okay.
So this is looking to expand the reach of that
Capacity,
rule.
right,
Right.
with reasonable parking solutions.
But even with this, if this was the law today, nobody could walk into this board and say, give me the parking.
Well,
You'd still have to comply with the design standards for the historic district.
It's actually even clearer than that. It's item A, historic structure conversion, subject to section 525.
Okay,
Four.
there we
No
go.
parking under them. Yeah,
Thank you.
All. That's all structures, even a hotel.
And no matter where
it is,
located.
it's not just the historic building. It is the difference between the city limits and the historic district.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. But what I'm saying is that in order to make sure that what Janice just brought up, and that's why A is A, it got added here, right at the top. Any historic conversion, no parking under it, done. And that's regardless of use.
I know, but I'm afraid we're confusing. The intention was outside the local historic district. We're making a recommendation to city council
Yep.
to make Cape May a little bit more unique or visionary. That within the historic district, the ordinances that are in place are adequate.
Actually, they're not. When I looked at the standards and even this language that's in the flood, it's not as clear as it could be. There's a lot of room for interpretation.
If the object is,
I don't know where-
but if the object is to provide an overall flavor and context to the city of Cape May, outside the historic district and to maintain that of the historic district, I don't see a reason why an all-encompassing change to the zoning ordinance shouldn't apply in both places.
I would
with-
expect
with-
inside the historic district would be more restrictive.
And that applies when things are brought to us.
Correct.
The citywide application of these ordinances doesn't mean that things in the historic district will no longer be brought to the HPC. That's as I understand it. What we're talking about is,
But if somebody says the ordinance says X for the city, I don't want it to apply in the historic district.
but it's something we accept for the historic district plus whatever else we regulate over the top of it.
So wait a
That's
minute.
as I see
If
it.
it's in the zoning ordinance, it's applied to the entire city limits, whether it's in the historic district or not. So all it's really doing is clarifying what we want for the historic district and expanding it to the entire city.
With the added addition that we have jurisdiction for specific things inside the historic district.
Correct. And that's all in the standard. Well, actually, it's not in the standard as clearly as it could be, but it's pretty close.
I think of this as an expansion of our views of the historic district to the whole city, and that means that the part outside of the historic district didn't have this before. It's passed, it'll have it, and so will the rest of the city, but it already had it, except in these exact words.
Yep.
So it's an overall expansion of our view, I think.
It is.
I think one way to try to explain this to the planning board and city council is just say, picture towns that we know of where most of the houses are up on stilts and the cars are underneath of it. Does that feel like Cape May at all to you, or is it totally away from how our town has developed?
Yeah.
And we're just trying to keep it that way. And most of them have enough land to do it. You know, they don't have to have total protection for the car to be able to have a home there on the property.
Given the exceptions that we're allowing or purporting to allow for commercial properties and other, I think we're serving legitimate interests of people who need to have parking under structures. But otherwise, we're setting a theme for what Cape May ought to be relative to the points you just mentioned. I don't think the selling part's that hard, just getting it clear what we have in mind might be.
One other thing on this, though, in terms of, I'm sorry we've been talking about this for a while, but we're talking about a lot of negatives, maybe a positive example of what we're trying to encourage here. So talking about some of those larger lots that feel kind of built out when you walk by them, they're not in the historic district. What are we trying to encourage development-wise with this type of change? And isn't it kind of the long driveway with parking oriented towards the rear? And maybe you have to sacrifice some of the building to do that, but isn't that a better look for Cape May? So is that really what this is geared towards? We want to encourage people to do that and not cram a bunch of cars under a building.
And lots of times, that brings the houses down enough to have a little bit of land around them.
Creating
and
light, air, and open space,
separation,
all that
air
stuff.
movement,
Right.
light between the houses.
So, but am I correct in saying
Yes.
that's kind of where this is coming from?
Yes.
Yeah, it's another.
Partially.
The implication of that, to that point is, it seems to me what I see is a bunch of houses that are like old cottages that got knocked down, and somebody is building a new house on it. New house is invariably 2 stories, and it's often you'll see a garage facing the street with the house next to it, overlapping above it in order to create, 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, something like that. In this scenario, that garage presumably would not be allowed. And, the city has, of course, I'm sure an incentive to try to find as much parking off the street as possible. Are we going to run into conflict with that?
That will be the counterpoint to this.
Yeah.
But this is not anti-parking. This is,
No.
make a.
This is really what you see.
You know what, earlier, what we were trying to say, and I don't know if it was understood, we were trying to say it's all about streetscape, and that basically is our bottom line, streetscape, and brand. And I think that this is what this is about more than anything else.
You know, Chris, in other towns, you walk down the street, all the pedestrian experience is just a bunch of garage doors.
And Jake, because you're dealing with small lots, right? So you've got to plan a way to get the car in. You don't have enough width to rotate things, so you're going to face the garages to the street.
I'm the Seattle City Zoning Board solicitor. And nothing against that, but the variation in architectural plans from here to there on a monthly basis is stark, and it's a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
They want to save their backyards for the swimming pool, not
Yeah.
garage and the cars.
And the pool house.
But to that point, maybe, a picture, to go along with this is what the HPC is after. This is what we're trying to promote. That might help with the transmission of this too.
Comparing and contrasting photos. We just won't identify where the locations are.
Right, yeah. They'll remain anonymous. You can,
No, I mean, the orientation of the garages isn't going to contribute to the parking shortfall, but obviously not allowing cars under elevated structures does eliminate potential parking if that's what you wanted to have. I mean, we do have shortfalls of parking spaces in the city, but I think you got to balance what the values are. Do you want to pull more cars under houses? Or do you want to have houses that just look better? And the place where it always happens is when you have a house with it's rented and there are 14 cars, right? So and that's a seasonal phenomenon here we have not overcome.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
We're not done yet, but so,
John.
I'm with John.
well, let's, where do we conclude here? You're getting input
We're going to get together this weekend,
and
and we'll finalize it.
finalize this.
Yeah, we'll finalize the proposed language, propose a new, revised, expanded, and clarified memo that may or may not include photographs, that incorporates a lot of these comments to help.
And we want to, and it seems to me we want to clarify, again, whether we're talking about the city or the historic district.
The city.
Well, I understand this to be talking about the city. That's citywide zoning ordinance.
Yes.
And
And it's just-
would you do us the courtesy of showing us a copy of what you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. I would not send it to
Thank you.
anybody before I send it to all you guys. This memo clearly states that we're looking for citywide. Yep.
Excluding the historic district.
No.
Well, I think that's.
John, you want to turn your mic back?
That's going to be a problem.
Your mic. John, your mic.
We should chat about this, because
John, your mic.
No, I think what we are expecting and demanding in the historic district is not going to be successful getting approved in this city.
But what,
But the question is, will this be successful in getting approved in the city? You may set, and we may set, and we may enforce higher in the historic district based on the design standards. And I No,
We're
that
making a
was a poor choice of
recommendation.
words. I apologize.
And I think it should exclude the historic district to make it
I'll let
clear.
John work on you for that, so.
yeah, I need to work on you on that, because I couldn't disagree more.
Just end and say, if you're in a historic district, refer to that section as well.
I don't see why we're making, it makes no sense to me.
Because we're more restrictive in the historic district.
You have that in the first.
That's in the historic standards.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
but
so-
Warren's afraid
You know,
that we.
you know,
don't say
there are lots
something
of
about
simple ways to do this, and I'm sure Chris
And
can
it'll be
figure out how to do it.
interpreted As, so it should be
But there
clear.
is no place in those standards, and I defy you to find it, because I spent hours looking for it.
Hey.
There's no place in the standards that say you cannot park beneath a historic structure. Nowhere does it say that. Find it for me and show it to me.
Okay,
It
I
doesn't
will.
say it anywhere.
Could,
It's in all of our guidelines.
Could we-
to review.
It's all of them.
But it's not in the standard.
And it
Guys,
doesn't
it's
mean
not
we
in
have
there.
never allowed somebody to park under.
we are moving forward toward finalizing this, and perhaps Warren and John should have a conference
Yes,
about it.
okay. Well, we'll continue this, and
This is, like I said, Rome wasn't built in one meeting.
We're trying though, man.
remember, I'm the one that brought the idea, although I'm beginning to wish I hadn't.
No, this is good. This is really good.
That another one that should be easier
Boats and trains and
is,
automobiles.
it's called boat parking, but it's boats and
RVs, trailers.
travel trailers or whatever. What has happened in here in Cape May is there is no limit, my understanding is there's no limit on parking a boat on a side yard. And if it has a license plate on it, there's no limit on parking a boat in the street. So we want to verify that that's true. If that's true, it seems to me that having boats on a trailer on a side yard in the historic district, or parking a travel trailer or however you want to define that, we should work on that, in your driveway really substantially distracts from the historic district, from the ambiance that we're trying to support. So it seems like it's a gap in our ordinances, and that we should, in the historic district, make a recommendation to change that. So right now, if you're in the historic district, for example, on Washington Street, and you want to park a 30-foot boat on a trailer on your side yard, visible from the street, there's no regulation to stop that. And of course, that doesn't fit historic Cape May.
Thing. And what bothered me is they say side yard. Now, I don't live in the historic district, but my neighbors across the street, we had just finished redoing our house. Our neighbors across the street decided to get a huge boat and shrink wrap it, and it was in their side yard, but which is also their front yard. Because the way their house is built, there's a garage, and then the driveway comes out of that. Luckily, they moved it.
That's not in the historic district, though.
No, but I even think all over town, which
No,
is.
I agree that but again, I think I'm the only one that, I see what happens in the historic district as being a little bit more restrictive than we might allow outside the historic district, even though we have no authority outside the historic district. So I don't disagree with you. I don't think.
Again, that's just not our brand, not our streetscape, nothing.
Right. Including in the historic district and outside. So I think we just have to keep it separate, otherwise we're going to confuse everything. But maybe we should try to look for ordinance wording that fits the historic district, and then offer that as.
Well, I had sent out those suggested provisions from municipalities that are similarly situated, and I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that some of them really did go into detail regarding front yard and side yard definitions, sight lines, setbacks, et cetera. But there was one major omission when I sent it out to everyone, because I didn't know that Chris was going to be appointed. And, you know, respectfully, I think that he should be included in this, and I should send them to him.
You know, one of the things, Jake, that struck me about all of the citations you made was that there probably were 37 different categories of things, ranging from big boats to little boats to trailers to RVs to things that you live in to snowmobiles to igloo. The problem might be that it might be easier to define what can be parked or put in position as opposed to what's prohibited. I mean, I just look at this inversely. I mean, we have a way of saying thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, and there's so many things you can't do that maybe one way to look at this to say what it is you can park in the historic district.
But conversely, you could also say that you would expand the definition of what is allowed to be parked there from simply boats, trailers, and RVs to even construction trailers. I mean, if you own a construction business, you have these big things sitting out there. I mean, they're equally as offensive when it comes to our streetscape.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting there
Yeah.
might be only 6 things you can park
Yeah.
in a residential driveway in the historic district, rather than 37 things you can't. Just a way of framing what it is that goes in and goes out. I just found that there's so many things that were uneven about different approaches taken by the different jurisdictions.
Yeah, and the
that
intent was to
my
allow the
brain kept
commission
saying,
to
why don't
whittle
you
it
just say
down?
what you can do rather than all the things you can't?
Can we, Chris, even in the historic district, if someone has a boat on a trailer with a license plate on one of the county roads, can we even restrict that?
The city already does restrict that.
Yeah.
If it's in a public right-of-way, there's a 24-hour limitation.
24 hours?
But the issue is, you move that into your driveway, and then you're kind of in no man's land. That's
Right.
the problem you're trying to solve here.
But there were other municipalities that said they allowed maybe for a 72-hour period for maintenance and cleaning, and then it has to be removed.
And, we have a non-residential trailer ordinance for construction trailers and things like that. So we do regulate other things that you would think, you know what, I can see a reason why that needs to be there for now, but not forever. And you may look at a boat trailer the same way. My point in saying that is, if the direction this board's going in is, we'd like to get those boats and things like that out of the streetscape and the front yard areas, it wouldn't be the first thing that the city code already kind of regulates in that manner.
Yeah, because the city has already codified street parking and
Right.
extensively.
Yeah.
So, we're really just concerned with on private property.
Well,
To your point, the example would be just going right down here on Washington, there's a building on the right that looks like it might have been a shop or something, and there's a boat tucked away next to it.
yeah, I didn't want to point out some, but
Sorry,
But-
I like examples.
But we also, in the historic district, there's also some campers that are parked on the property and remain there when they're not in use. So, and obviously, a large camper doesn't fit the historic district. So it's not just boats. But trying to list what,
Only the following vehicles or conveyances shall be permitted to be parked on residential property. A, B, C, D. If it's not there, it's prohibited.
Be permitted.
Some towns also prohibit.
I'm not trying
Well,
to name them, I'm just saying that there's a way of doing this without doing 37 prohibitions.
I would be interested in, you're taking a shot at defining. You're going to have the same problem trying to define what you can park.
Well, I don't, but others might.
Propose something.
what's that?
Propose the list.
Okay, but I said there was one major omission, and it's that I didn't know that Chris would be appointed. I think he should be included in this with that memo.
I can volunteer to take a look at what Mr. Stevenson had sent over, and we can try and work on something that.
Yeah, okay.
For the board's review
Yeah.
next time we meet.
All right, I'd be glad to meet
Great.
you regarding that.
So we're talking about restricted parking in the historic district with respect to these
Right.
things that, the list of vehicles one way or the other, pro or con, negative or positive.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
affects.
all right,
the
that's a good
streetscape.
place to start.
Yeah.
And we'll get there.
So,
I'll meet with Chris regarding it, maybe next.
You can just send me the list, I'll take a look at it.
Okay, great, fantastic.
anything else to come before this august board?
Mr. Chairman, about the February meeting, did you want to say anything about that?
Well, we have in the past, canceled the February meeting for lack of interest. No, lack of applications. And so the question is whether we should,
These guys could be right back at you. You could have LeBaire back at you for February. You don't want to delay them till March, do you?
I see no reason not to hold the meeting,
Um,
other than you won't be here.
well, no, we won't have legal representation here.
Oh.
I think we need to come and be here and be present. If there's a quorum.
Chris, you have another commitment for that date?
Actually, CL meets the same night. And it's only that I meet first Mondays. So the other Mondays are not an issue for this board, but that was just the one because the date.
Could we just move the meeting a day?
Well, we talked about that, but I think that might really confuse everybody, but,
Just mark a different day on my calendar. I mean, whatever. I mean, it seems to me at the pace that we're going, the volume of applications we
well, we
have.
only have one
Well,
application.
they have, that has seriously diminished. And partly because the review committee has done such a good job
Twelfth
of
is really
getting
for
things
president.
straight down in review.
Right now,
I-
wait a minute. We only have one application.
Yep.
We're not sure that they're going to be ready to come back.
Miss Judy.
So,
It's February 8th, right?
The 12th?
So really,
Why didn't we do the 12th?
yeah, 5th.
that's a holiday.
Remember, there used to be this thing called Lincoln's birthday? They-
Oh, separately.
The city prefers Lincoln rather than President's.
President's Day is
Presentation
different.
19th.
That's fine with me. I mean, if you want to cancel it, it's okay.
So, well, no, the idea of bringing it up is, we usually do it in a closet where we just send out a memo and say the meeting's canceled.
Let's try to cancel it.
And so the people that came before us,
Yeah.
they've waived the 45 days, and so they can come back for the March meeting.
So do we want to wait a couple weeks and see what the volume is, and if it's low, then cancel?
I mean, that's not a
Well,
project that they're planning to do.
first problem we have
They're not gonna
is,
tear down a whole
is the
wing
date,
of the
the
motel.
date's not viable for legal
Right,
representation.
we don't have a,
That's the first problem.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, we've held meetings before without Bob.
We're getting into some pretty muddy stuff here.
Yeah. I don't wanna do that.
But this particular case, I don't think
I'll notice it.
we should hear without legal representation, so. It
Oh, shall we cancel?
it seems to me that
Oh, we have no application.
if we give everybody notice, including them, that we can cancel this February meeting.
Do we need to make a motion about this? Because
Well,
we
in
already
the past,
approved the.
in the past, we just, this is the first time we brought it up as a discussion.
Well, but earlier.
So what I like about John is he's really technical because we just approved a list of meeting dates. So, and that's fine with me.
So, what do you,
No, because that was just a conceptual approval, so we're just going to send that out.
How about a motion that would,
Amend.
no, a motion that would empower the chair to decide whether or not we ought to have a February meeting based on whatever the circumstances are of available business and people and stuff like that. Just put it in your hands,
I'll second that motion.
okay?
well, why don't we just do it now, though, and then we know about the 45 days? So if an application comes in,
Fine, if you want to just cancel it, we'll cancel it.
Do that, Jim. Amend the motion, setting the meeting dates to eliminate the meeting in February due to inability to have chair and legal support.
I don't think we
We
need to
don't
put,
need all
I don't
that
think we need the
Too
reasons.
many people will
All
want.
right, so I will move to amend the earlier adoption of the schedule of meetings for this commission to exclude a February meeting.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Becker. Mr. Copeland?
yes,
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Bisagno?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker, thank you.
welcome to the HPC meeting. Jesus. I think of all the meetings that we've had, this has been the strangest in the last couple of years.
I'd say it rank in the top 5.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I
So
move,
moved.
To adjourn?
Thank you.
welcome.
Are we